Learn English through story. The secret seduction. The rain fell in a slow, deliberate rhythm, tapping against the high-arched windows of the Belrose Manor. A sound both comforting and ominous in the vast silence of the estate. Evelyn Lawrence sat by the grand fireplace, the flames casting flickering shadows on the polished mahogany walls. A letter rested in her lap, its edges crumpled from the weight of hesitation. She had read it many times, yet each time, the words carved deeper into her thoughts, unsettling and intoxicating in equal measure. My dearest Evelyn, there are truths buried beneath the surface of what we call love. Truths so alluring yet so dangerous that to know them is to risk everything. Meet me where the moon kisses the water, and I shall show you a world beyond virtue and restraint. Yours always, Evelyn's fingers tightened around the paper. She should have burned it, tossed it into the flames and let the heat consume the temptation it carried. But she didn't. Adrian Sinclair had always been a mystery, wrapped in silken danger, his presence a whisper of something forbidden. She had been warned about him. Society labelled him a man without honour, a seducer of hearts and destroyer of reputations. And yet, she had never felt more alive than when his eyes found hers across a crowded ballroom, when his voice curled around her name like a secret meant only for her. A choice stood before her, the path of duty, carved by her family's expectations, or the untamed road Adrian offered, one that led into a world where desire ruled over decorum. She thought of her fiancé, Thomas Whitmore, a man of unwavering principles, stable and predictable, his love a promise of security. She had convinced herself that this was what she wanted. But now, under the glow of firelight, she wasn't sure if she had ever wanted anything as much as the unknown. Promise in Adrian's letter. The clock struck midnight, its chime reverberating through the silence. Evelyn inhaled sharply. She had to decide. Slowly, deliberately, she stood, her silk gown whispering against the marble floor as she moved toward the door. The letter, once held with uncertainty, now rested in her grasp with quiet determination. Tonight she would discover what lay beyond the boundaries of propriety. Tonight she would learn the price of desire. Evelyn stepped out into the tempestuous night, her heart pulsing in time with the drumming rain. The heavy wooden door closed behind her with a soft thud, sealing her fate as the cold, damp air enveloped her. Every droplet that hit her porcelain skin seemed to whisper of both peril and promise. A siren call from the unknown. In the darkness, the sprawling grounds of Belrose Manor transformed into a labyrinth of shadow and silver light. She hesitated only for a moment at the threshold. Before her trembling, resolve carried her forward. The winding path before her was lit only by the erratic flashes of distant lightning. Each step felt laden with the weight of choices unmade and futures uncertain. As she strode through the manor's gardens, the familiar scent of roses and earth was replaced by the bracing aroma of rain and night air, reminder that nothing in life was ever exactly as it seemed. Her mind raced back to the letter's promise. Meet me where the moon kisses the water. That mysterious invitation ignited a spark within her, daring her to defy convention and explore the boundaries of her own desires. The path led her down a narrow corridor flanked by ancient oak trees whose gnarled branches reached out like skeletal fingers. In the distance, the soft murmur of a river guided her steps, and as she drew nearer, the sound grew into a steady, hypnotic cadence. The water glistened under the intermittent glow of the moon, its surface rippling with secrets. It was here, beside the languid flow of the river, that she first saw him. Adrian Sinclair emerged from the shadows like a figure from a half-remembered dream. His presence was at once magnetic and enigmatic, a living contradiction of danger and allure. The raindrops clung to his dark hair and slicked back, a face that bore the marks of both passion and sorrow. For a moment, time seemed to suspend itself as their eyes met. In that silent exchange, Evelyn felt as if the world had contracted to the space between them, every heartbeat echoing with the promise of an irreversible change. "Evelyn," Adrian murmured, his voice a blend of tenderness and command. "I've been waiting for you." His tone, warm yet imbued with a hint of something unspoken, sent tremors of anticipation through her. It was as though he knew the secret language of her soul, every hidden longing, every silent plea for liberation. Without another word, he extended a hand, inviting her to cross the threshold between certainty and the seductive unknown. Despite the chill of the rain, Evelyn's hand found warmth in his, and as their fingers intertwined, a current of understanding passed between them. She did not know where this path would lead, but in that moment, her life had shrunk to the electrifying spark of their touch and the unfolding promise of revelation. They began to walk along the riverbank, their pace unhurried as if the world around them had slipped into a dreamlike haze. The rain softened to a gentle drizzle, and the moon, now partially veiled by drifting clouds, cast a silvery glow upon their path. Adrian spoke softly, his words weaving a tapestry of a world, beyond societal confines, a realm where desire was not sinful but unnatural, even sacred, part of the human experience. He recounted tales of ancient love, of souls entwined in passion and conflict, and of moral battles fought in the quiet recesses of the heart. Each story was imbued with a deep sense of melancholy and wisdom, urging Evelyn to question the rigid morality that had long governed her life. As they walked, memories of her past choices emerged, of times when she had conformed to expectations, when she had sacrificed her own passions for the sake of duty. In the safe confines of Belrose Manor, she had always played the part of the dutiful daughter, the reliable fiancée, the obedient member of society. Yet here, under the watchful eyes of the stars and the soft murmur of the river, those memories began to blur with a newfound possibility. The seduction in Adrian's eyes was not merely physical. It was an invitation to reclaim a piece of herself that had been buried beneath layers of convention and fear. There was a certain irony in the way nature now mirrored her inner turmoil. The river, flowing inexorably towards an unseen destination, was a reminder of the unstoppable force of change. Like the water carving its way through ancient stone, Evelyn sensed that her own life was on the verge of a profound transformation. Adrian's presence was both the catalyst and the embodiment of that change, a man who defied easy categorization, whose own story was written in shades of grey rather than black and white. Their conversation deepened as they found a secluded spot on a small bank, where the water lapped gently against smooth stones. Adrian's eyes, reflecting the moonlight, searched hers as if trying to decipher the myriad emotions swirling within. "I know the path you've walked," he said softly, "and I know the burden of expectations that have chained you. But there is a freedom in embracing who you truly are. Freedom that comes at the cost of certainty, yet offers the richness of life in its truest form." Evelyn listened, her heart a tumult of hope and trepidation. The allure of his words was undeniable, yet every instinct whispered caution. Could she truly abandon the safe harbor of all she had known for this intoxicating, uncertain promise of passion and self-discovery? The moral boundaries she had so long adhered to were suddenly exposed as constructs of a life half-lived. Yet they still held a familiar comfort in their predictability. The duality of her longing was a potent reminder that seduction, after all, was never just about the physical. It was a challenge to the very principles that defined her existence. The night deepened, and so did their dialogue. Adrian spoke of beauty in imperfection, of the courage required to shatter the illusion of perfection that society so often demanded. His words painted a picture of love and desire as inherently messy, yet infinitely more genuine than the sanitized versions often paraded in polite company. In this raw honesty, Evelyn found a mirror to her own hidden desires, a longing not just for romance, but for an authentic life, where vulnerability was embraced and mistakes were seen as the marks of a soul truly alive. As the hours slipped by, the tension between them grew palpable, a silent, magnetic force that defied the confines of conventional morality. Yet amid the rising passion, a quiet moral reckoning simmered in the background. Evelyn's inner voice, long muted by duty and expectation, now began to question. Was this seduction merely a dalliance with danger? Or was it the catalyst for something far more transformative? Adrian, too, seemed burdened by the weight of his own past transgressions, his eyes occasionally clouded with regret and sorrow. His allure was tinged with a bittersweet vulnerability, a reminder that the pursuit of desire was never without consequence. In the reflective silence that followed, Evelyn found herself grappling with the duality of her nature. She had always been taught that seduction was the domain of the reckless, of those willing to forfeit morality for the sake of fleeting pleasure. And yet, here she was, standing on the edge of a revelation that promised not only the ecstasy of forbidden passion, but also the possibility of personal rebirth. The moral implications of her actions loomed large, a quiet spectre in the night, urging her to consider the cost of embracing such a path. Her thoughts wandered to Thomas Whitmore, a man whose steady love and unwavering support had once been her anchor in the stormy sea of life. His kind eyes and gentle nature had offered her a semblance of security, a promise of stability in a world that often seemed chaotic. Yet in the face of Adrian's raw intensity, that security began to feel like a gilded cage, safe but ultimately suffocating. The dichotomy was heart-wrenching. To choose the familiar comfort of a life defined by duty, or to risk everything for a love that burned with the fierce, unpredictable flame of desire. In that moment, as the night embraced them in its enigmatic silence, Evelyn realized that seduction was not merely the act of being enticed. It was a profound invitation to confront one's own inner truths, to acknowledge the parts of oneself that had long been neglected or suppressed. It was a call to live authentically, even if that authenticity came with pain and uncertainty. And so, with a trembling exhale that mingled fear and anticipation, she made her choice. Turning to Adrian, she spoke in a voice that was both resolute and soft. I want to understand what it means to be truly alive, to embrace every part of who I am, even if that means walking a path fraught with peril. Her words, spoken with a sincerity that resonated deep within, bridged the gap between the safe confines of her past and the wild unknown of her future. Adrian's response was a tender smile, one that spoke of shared secrets and unspoken promises. "Then let us journey together," he whispered, "beyond the boundaries of what you've always known. Let us explore the depths of desire, the complexities of morality, and the transformative power of love." The night seemed to sigh in agreement as the river flowed on, its waters carrying away the remnants of old certainties and leaving in their wake the potential for rebirth. As they sat together on the bank, the rain had ceased, replaced by a calm that belied the emotional storm within. In that quiet interlude, the moral landscape of Evelyn's life began to shift. The seduction was no longer an act of simple temptation. It was a profound reckoning, a declaration that she would no longer be defined solely by the expectations of others. In the days that followed, Evelyn found herself ensnared in a delicate dance of passion and introspection. The days were a blend of stolen moments and lingering doubts, of whispered confessions and silent reconciliations with a past that now seemed both distant and integral to her unfolding identity. Adrian, with all his complexities, became both a mirror and a guide, a reminder that to truly know oneself, one must sometimes wander through the labyrinth of desire and risk, the pain of inevitable change. Their rendezvous took them through moonlit gardens, abandoned estates reclaimed by nature, and hidden enclaves where the conventions of society held no sway. With every encounter, Evelyn felt the rigid boundaries of her former life erode, replaced by an awareness of a more nuanced morality, one that recognized the beauty in imperfection and the necessity of vulnerability. Yet, even as passion soared, the consequences of their actions cast long shadows. In quiet moments of solitude, when the echoes of the past grew loud, she wondered if the price of such profound transformation might be too steep. Moral conflicts churned within her as she confronted the duality of her existence. The seduction that had initially promised liberation now revealed itself as a double-edged sword, a source of both empowerment and inevitable sorrow. Every act of passion carried with it a weight of responsibility, a recognition that to break free from convention was to challenge the very foundations of what she had believed to be right. And yet, in the raw honesty of those moments, there emerged a strength she had never known, a fierce determination to embrace the totality of her human experience, no matter how painful or unpredictable it might be. As the weeks turned into months, Evelyn's internal transformation became evident, not only in her choices, but in the quiet revolution that took root within her soul. She began to see beauty in the blurred lines between right and wrong, understanding that morality was not a rigid construct, but a fluid interplay of circumstances, emotions, and the undeniable truth of human imperfection. In the wake of each encounter with Adrian, she pieced together fragments of a new self, one that could no longer be confined to the roles prescribed by a society that prized order over authenticity. There were moments, too, of bitter reflection, instances when the guilt of betrayal, the memory of promises once made, and the inevitable consequences of defying convention converged into a crushing wave of remorse. In the stillness of early dawns, as the first light crept over the horizon, Evelyn would sometimes find herself alone with her thoughts, questioning if the seduction of her heart had been a betrayal not only of others but of her own inner truth. It was in these moments that the moral gravity of her decisions felt almost unbearable, a stark reminder that every choice, no matter how liberating, carried the risk of irrevocable loss. Yet, amidst that inner tumult, there also bloomed a quiet joy, a realization that to love and to be loved in return, even in the most unconventional ways, was to engage fully with the essence of life. Adrian, with his own haunted past and tender capacity for redemption, embodied the paradox of desire, a force that could both heal and wound, that demanded courage even as it promised ecstasy. Together, they navigated a precarious balance, each shared glance and whispered promise, a step deeper into a realm where the dichotomy of right and wrong blurred into shades of raw, undeniable truth. In the lingering twilight of one particularly poignant evening, as the sky shifted from the soft glow of dusk to the deep indigo of night, Evelyn found herself standing before a mirror in a quiet, forgotten conservatory. The reflection that met her gaze was both familiar and startlingly newer. Woman whose eyes shone with the light of hard-won wisdom, whose expression bore the delicate scars of battles fought in the name of desire. In that silent communion with herself, she understood that the seduction was not just an external affair, but an intimate dialogue with the very core of her being. The journey had forced her to confront the contradictions that defined her, the yearning for both freedom and belonging, the pull of passion and the call of responsibility, the delicate dance between self-indulgence and self-sacrifice. In that moment of introspection, the weight of her choices settled upon her like a soft, persistent cloak. The moral tapestry of her life had been irrevocably altered, each thread woven with the intensity of passion and the inevitability of consequence. And while the future remained as elusive as the play of light on the river's surface, Evelyn felt a profound sense of clarity. The seduction, the secret, transformative force, had not only shattered the confines of her old life, but had also unlocked the door to a deeper, more authentic existence. Standing there in the fading light of the conservatory, she whispered a silent vow to herself that no matter what storms might come, she would continue to seek the truth of her own heart, embracing both its beauty and its frailty. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with risks and the constant interplay of joy and sorrow. Yet it was hers alone to traverse. In that quiet revelation, Evelyn understood that the secret seduction was not merely the tale of a forbidden love affair, was the enduring story of human transformation, a testament to the courage required to live a life unburdened by the constraints of convention. And so, as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the gloom of night, Evelyn and Adrian, bound by an understanding that transcended simple desire, stepped forward into the unfolding day. Their path was not marked by certainty, nor was it free from the shadows of their past mistakes. But in every measured step, in every tender glance shared in the quiet moments between heartbeats, there lay the promise of a life, fully lived, a life where moral absolutes gave way to the rich, often messy spectrum of human experience. The river continued to flow beside them, a silent witness to the evolution of two souls daring to challenge the boundaries of what was known. In that ever-changing current, in the interplay of light and shadow along its banks, lay the essence of their journey, an eternal dance between the forces of duty and desire, of the old and the new, of the self that once was and the self that was destined to emerge. And in the unfolding narrative of their lives, every moment, every tender joy, every heart-wrenching regret became a thread in the grand tapestry of redemption, transformation, and ultimately, the secret seduction of a truth that lay at the very heart of being human. In the pale light of dawn that followed that fateful night by the riverbank, Evelyn awoke with the gentle hum of the coming day echoing in her ears. The cool, silvered morning air seemed to wash away the lingering remnants of uncertainty, yet it also carried the weight of every choice made and every promise unspoken. As she slowly rose from the window seat of her lonely room at Belrose Manor, a bittersweet clarity unfolded in her mind. Realization that each moment of this new path was a quiet rebellion against the life of secure conformity she had once known. The letters from Adrian, now carefully tucked away in a drawer, beckoned her memory with their delicate script and veiled promises. Their contents had not been merely expressions of desire, but incantations calling forth a truth buried deep within her soul. In the echo of each written word, Evelyn felt both the seductive pull of an untamed future and the somber reminder of the costs inherent in abandoning long-held virtues. Her heart, at once tender and unyielding, now beat to the rhythm of a newfound urgency, a rhythm that seemed to harmonize with the murmuring river outside. That morning, as she walked the garden paths of the manor, each step was both a farewell to the safe certainties of her past and a tentative welcome to an uncertain destiny. The dew-kissed petals of the roses, trembling in the gentle breeze, mirrored the fragility of her own awakening. In every delicate droplet, she recognized a reflection of the countless moments of inner conflict, each a silent protest against the rigid constraints imposed upon her by society and by her own expectations. Her thoughts wandered to the bittersweet recollections of her former life, of the days when duty and propriety had been her steadfast companions, of evenings spent in the company of polite acquaintances and measured laughter at restrained gatherings. Yet those memories, though once comforting, now felt like relics of an existence half-lived. Adrian's presence had ignited in her a flame that refused to be subdued by the chill of convention, and that flame now burned as a beacon guiding her into the uncharted territories of self-discovery. On that very day, as the sun crept higher and painted the sky with hues of hope and possibility, Evelyn found herself drawn to a secluded part of the garden, a small, forgotten courtyard where time seemed to slow. There, amidst the wild tangles of ivy and the gentle murmur of a hidden fountain, she encountered a solitary figure. He was seated on a weathered stone bench, his gaze fixed on the interplay of light and shadow on the ancient walls. It was not Adrian. This man was older, his features etched with a mixture of sorrow and wisdom. Yet in his quiet dignity, Evelyn sensed the echoes of a soul that had once known the agony of lost love and the rapture of redemption. "Miss Laurent," the man greeted softly, his voice resonating like a quiet hymn in the stillness of the courtyard. "I believe you carry a heavy heart today." Evelyn paused, unsure whether to be wary or comforted by this unexpected encounter. His eyes, though clouded by age, held a penetrating clarity, a look that seemed to see beyond the surface, into the labyrinth of her inner turmoil. "I suppose," she replied cautiously, "that my heart is both heavy and hopeful. It is learning the cost of truth and the price of freedom." The man nodded slowly. "There is a certain moral alchemy in that struggle, the transformation of pain into wisdom, of despair into a cautious joy. It is not an easy path, but it is one that enriches the soul." His words were gentle yet unyielding, a reminder that the journey towards self-realization was often paved with sacrifice and bittersweet revelations. As they spoke, Evelyn found herself opening up in a way that she had not anticipated. The conversation meandered from the simple beauty of the garden to deeper musings on love, duty, and the unspoken vows that tie us to our pasts. The older man spoke of his own life, a tapestry of triumphs and regrets, of moments when he had chosen between the ease of conformity and the perilous thrill of pursuing a forbidden truth. "I once believed," he said, "that morality was a fixed line drawn in the sand. But I have come to see that it is much more fluid, a dance of shadows and light, ever changing with the cadence of our choices." Evelyn listened intently, her own heart stirring with each measured word. In the cadence of his voice, she detected a challenge to her long-held beliefs as silent invitation to consider that perhaps the moral constraints she had known were not immutable edicts, but rather evolving truths that could be reinterpreted in the face of profound passion and transformation. In the days that followed, Evelyn's internal world blossomed into a kaleidoscope of conflicting emotions. At Belrose Manor, the corridors seemed to whisper memories of a life once orderly and predictable, while outside, the world beckoned with the promise of untold adventures. Every stolen glance at the mirror revealed a woman in the midst of becoming, a woman whose eyes now shone with a complex mixture of defiance, tenderness, and a deep-seated yearning for authenticity. Amid this inner tumult, her encounters with Adrian became more frequent and intense. Their secret meetings, often in the quiet corners of moonlit gardens or beside hidden streams, were charged with an electricity that defied the simple equations of pleasure and duty. Adrian, too, was evolving. The carefree, almost reckless seducer she had once known now revealed moments of vulnerability, recognition of the burdens of his own past and the scars left by choices that, though made in pursuit of desire, had cost him dearly. One night, under a sky heavy with unspoken promises, the two found themselves in the quiet solitude of a long-abandoned conservatory. The glass ceiling above, dusted with the gentle patina of time, let in silvery moonlight that bathed the room in an ethereal glow. There, in that fragile space between reality and dream, Adrian reached out to Evelyn with a tenderness that belied his rough exterior. "Evelyn," he murmured, his voice low and tremulous, as though confessing a sacred secret. "I have spent so long wandering the edges of passion and vice, never truly understanding the depth of what it means to surrender. With you, I am learning that seduction is not merely the pursuit of ephemeral pleasure, it is a call to transform, to reveal the hidden parts of ourselves that we have long denied." Her eyes glistened in the moonlight, reflecting the inner battle between fear and longing. "And what if I am afraid?" she whispered. "Afraid that in giving in, I will lose everything I once held dear, the identity that society has so meticulously constructed for me." Adrian's gaze softened, and he stepped closer until the space between them evaporated. "Then let us be brave together," he replied, "and forge a path that is neither defined by duty nor condemned by sin. Let our love be the secret seduction that awakens the dormant truth in us, a truth that transcends the petty definitions of right and wrong, and celebrates the fullness of being alive." In that moment, as their lips met in a tentative yet profound embrace, Evelyn felt the boundaries of her old self crumble away. The kiss was both an act of defiance and a tender reconciliation, a merging of two souls who dared to defy the rigid lines drawn by convention. It was as if in that kiss, the very air around them shimmered with the promise of transformation, and every star in the sky bore witness to a quiet revolution of the heart. Yet even as passion surged through her veins, Evelyn could not entirely banish the lingering echoes of guilt and uncertainty. In the quiet moments after their embrace, when the world seemed to hold its breath and the future lay open like a blank page, she found herself wrestling with a profound question. Was it possible to embrace such a radical transformation without forsaking the moral compass that had long guided her life? The answer, she began to suspect, lay not in a rejection of her past, but in an integration of all that she was, both the disciplined daughter of a respectable family and the mature, passionate woman who dared to dream of a life unfettered by convention. The moral journey, she realized, was not about choosing one extreme over the other, but about finding a delicate balance between duty and desire, a harmony where every act of seduction carried with it the seed of self-reclamation. As the seasons turned and the days folded into one another like the pages of an unfinished manuscript, Evelyn's transformation took on a life of its own. In quiet introspection and in the fervent, secret exchanges with Adrian, she began to reconstruct her identity as self that was no longer defined solely by the expectations of others, but by the luminous truths hidden in the recesses of her own heart. There were moments of solitary contemplation when, sitting by the manor's ancient library window, she would trace the faded lines of a poem or the quiet notes of a long-forgotten melody. In those moments, the voice of her conscience, soft questioning and unyielding, whispered reminders of what had been sacrificed in the pursuit of forbidden pleasure. And yet, those same whispers now carried the gentle assurance that every step into the unknown was an act of profound courage, an embrace of the very essence of life. The moral tapestry of Evelyn's existence, once rigidly woven with threads of duty and decorum, was now being rethreaded with the vibrant hues of vulnerability and truth. The secret seduction that had begun as an external affair of the senses was evolving into a deeply personal odyssey, a journey of redemption, where every moment of passion was a step toward reclaiming her true self. In time, whispers of her transformation began to stir. Even among the hallowed halls of Belrose Manor, some of the servants noticed a new light. In her eyes, a confident stride that spoke of secret adventures and quiet revolutions. Even Thomas Whitmore, whose gentle love had once been her safe harbor, began to sense that the woman he had pledged to marry was now a mosaic of passions and convictions, far richer than he had ever imagined. Though the spectre of betrayal hovered, like an uninvited guest at every turning point, Evelyn found herself growing into a woman, unafraid to face both the ecstasy of desire and the weight of consequence. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon one crisp autumn evening, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of Belrose Manor, Evelyn stood at the threshold of a future replete with both promise and peril. The secret seduction that had once been an illicit dalliance had transformed into a clarion call to live fully, to embrace the complexity of human existence, and to trust that even in the face of moral ambiguity, there lay a path to redemption and self-fulfillment. In that quiet, decisive moment, as the chill of night mingled with the warmth of her resolve, she vowed silently that she would no longer hide from the truths within her. With every step she took into the unfolding mystery of her life, Evelyn carried the light of a new dawn, a light born of passion, tempered by wisdom, and illuminated by the secret seduction of a soul finally set free. That night, as twilight bled into an inky darkness, Evelyn remained awake in her private studio, sanctuary of leather-bound books and the soft tick of a grand clock. The manor, usually echoing with the hushed routine of propriety, now hummed with a restless energy, as if it too sensed the monumental shift in its mistress. She sat by a window overlooking the overgrown rose garden, where the moon's silver light revealed both beauty and decay. In that quiet solitude, she replayed the events of the day, the whispered conversation in the secluded courtyard, the solemn words of the older gentleman, and the fervent kiss with Adrian in the conservatory. Each memory was a brushstroke painting a new portrait of her soul. Yet, amid the euphoria of liberation, a subtle dread had taken root. The facade of her former life duty, familial expectation, and the safe confines of Belrose Manor loomed like an inescapable spectre. She knew that stepping away from that world came with consequences. The whispers among the staff had begun, and even Thomas Whitmore, her steadfast fiancé, seemed increasingly distant in his reserved, methodical manner. His polite inquiries at dinner were laced with uncertainty. His eyes, which had once shone with gentle promise, now betrayed a flicker of concern. It was as if the man she had once known was trying desperately to cling to a version of her that no longer existed. Unable to sleep, Evelyn resolved to confront these ghosts head-on. She rose, her steps quiet yet determined, and wrapped herself in a soft, dark shawl. The corridor outside her study was dim, lit only by the warm glow of wall sconces. Each step echoed, as if marking her progress into uncharted territory, the territory of her own truth. As she approached the drawing room, the murmur of voices reached her ears. Her mother, long the embodiment of strict propriety and unyielding tradition, was seated with Thomas and several family acquaintances. Their conversation faltered as she entered, and all eyes turned to her. For a moment, the weight of expectation pressed upon her heart. But Evelyn drew a slow breath and reminded herself that she was no longer the pliant daughter, who had always obeyed without question. "Evelyn, dear," her mother said, her tone measured yet edged with worry, "we've noticed you've been distant lately. Is everything all right?" The question, seemingly innocent, was heavy with implication and inquiry not just into her well-being, but into the fabric of her identity. Evelyn's gaze swept across the room, noting Thomas's restrained concern, and the murmurs of disapproval from some relatives. With a voice steady yet imbued with newfound resolve, she replied, "I have been reflecting, Mother. I have come to realize that the life I've led, defined by duty and expectation, has not allowed me the freedom to truly be myself. I have tasted passion and felt the stirring of a deeper truth that demands honesty, even if it shatters old illusions." A tense silence fell. Thomas's eyes, dark and troubled, searched hers for a sign of the woman he had once adored. "Evelyn," he began softly, "I always believed in you. But this change, it feels as if you're drifting away from all that we built together." His voice was a blend of love and sorrow, love tethered to a past that now seemed both distant and desperately fragile. Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to hide. "Thomas, I do not wish to abandon what we once cherished, but I cannot continue living a lie in existence, dictated solely by the expectations of others. I have discovered that seduction, in its truest form, is not merely about physical passion. It is the unveiling of the soul, the courageous act of reclaiming one's identity. I must know who I am beyond these gilded walls, beyond the role I was forced to play. Her mother's face tightened with disapproval, but even she could not entirely mask the underlying hurt in her eyes. One of the family acquaintances shifted uncomfortably, and Thomas, with a heavy sigh, looked down at his hands as if gathering the remnants of a broken dream. That evening, long after the drawing room had emptied and the manor lay silent, Evelyn returned to the conservatory. The night air was cool and still, and the moon cast an unwavering light upon the dewy foliage. Here, in the solitude of the conservatory, she sought the presence of Adrian, man whose passion had awakened something dormant within her. She knew that the path ahead was fraught with peril, that the consequences of defying societal norms could be ruinous. Yet, as she lingered among the overgrown ivy and crumbling marble statues, she felt the same irresistible pull that had driven her to this very moment. It was there that Adrian appeared, emerging from a shadowed archway. His eyes, deep and tumultuous, reflected both desire and regret. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low and filled with the promise of both redemption and danger. "I feared you might be lost in the labyrinth of your past. I stand here not to condemn, but to remind you that every choice, no matter how painful, carries with it the seed of transformation." Their conversation unfurled in hushed tones beneath the celestial vault, each word an invocation of hope and sorrow. Adrian spoke of his own haunted past, a lifetime spent navigating the precarious intersection of passion and responsibility. "We are both broken in our own ways," he confessed, "but in our vulnerability lies the power to rebuild ourselves anew." Evelyn listened, the tumult within her beginning to settle into a fragile calm. In the soft murmur of the night, as the scent of damp earth mingled with the faint perfume of blooming jasmine, she realized that her journey was only beginning. The seduction she had embraced was not one of mere physical enticement, but a profound moral awakening, a reclamation of her identity and the courage to love herself, even when the world sought to confine her within narrow definitions of propriety. As dawn approached, washing the sky with hues of pale gold and soft lavender, Evelyn and Adrian stood together beneath the ancient oak in the garden. Their silhouettes merged into one as the first rays of light gently dispelled the night. In that luminous moment, Evelyn made a silent promise. She would navigate the treacherous waters of her past, confront the ghosts of her old life, and emerge as a woman defined not by the constraints of duty, but by the boundless courage to embrace her true self. The future remained uncertain, fraught with the potential for both heartache and transcendence. Yet, as Evelyn gazed at the horizon where the dark was giving way to the promise of a new day, she felt for the first time a stirring of hope, a hope that was as delicate and powerful as the secret seduction of a soul set free. Dawn's pale glow had barely faded from the horizon when Evelyn slowly slipped back through the quiet corridors of Belrose Manor. The promise of a new beginning still shimmered in her heart. Yet every step back into the familiar halls brought with it a tremor of foreboding. Even as the manor's ancient walls bore silent witness to centuries of secrets and whispered traditions, Evelyn sensed that today they would also hear her declaration of independence. Inside her chamber, the muted clatter of the household had barely begun to stir. Thomas Whitmore stood by the window, staring out at the awakening gardens as if searching for something lost in the past. His posture was tense, a rigid combination of duty and despair. The moment his eyes met hers, the quiet space between them thickened with unspoken accusations and fears. "Thomas," she began softly, her voice steady but trembling with the weight of her resolve. "I must speak with you." The single word an invitation to confrontation seemed to echo off the time-worn furniture. He turned slowly, his face an unreadable mask of sorrow and apprehension. "I wondered when you'd find your voice," he replied, his tone measured, betraying a vulnerability that only deepened the chasm between what he had known and what she now embodied. Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes shining with the dual light of hope and regret. "For years I lived defined by others' expectations. I was the dutiful daughter, the obedient fiancée trapped in a gilded cage of propriety. But I have tasted passion, I have seen the world beyond these walls, and I have discovered a truth in myself that I can no longer deny." Her words were a quiet revolution, each syllable a defiant declaration against the constraints of her past. Thomas's eyes flickered with pain. "But what of our plans, Evelyn? Our shared future was built on certainty, on stability." His voice wavered, as if the very idea of her transformation threatened to shatter the delicate equilibrium they had once maintained. She reached out, taking his hand in a gesture that was both tender and resolute. "I am not abandoning you, nor dismissing what we once had. I merely can no longer live a lie. The person I was is now interwoven with the person I am becoming. This journey, it has been one of seduction in its truest sense. Not the fleeting carnal kind, but the seduction of the soul, the allure of authenticity." Her gaze dropped to the trembling hands clasped together, as if she could feel the merging of two very different worlds. Across the manor, hushed murmurs had already begun. Servants exchanged glances, and even the stern eyes of her mother, ever the guardian of tradition, seemed to soften just for a moment. Yet the cost of this transformation was laid bare in the strained silence that followed. Thomas, his voice low and pained, whispered, "And what if, in your pursuit of freedom, you lose all that we built together?" The question was not an accusation, but a plea, a desperate attempt to salvage a shared history even as it crumbled. Outside, the first rays of the sun filtered through the window panes, casting long, wavering shadows that danced along the flora, reminder that the past and the present were forever intertwined. Evelyn's thoughts drifted to the memory of her clandestine encounter with Adrian in the conservatory, where passion had ignited the spark of transformation. Yet, as the new day beckoned, she knew that the ultimate test of her awakening lay in reconciling the person she had been with the person she was destined to become. After a long, heavy silence, she spoke again, her voice imbued with the quiet strength of one who had stared into the depths of her soul. "Thomas, I believe that true love is not the absence of conflict, but the courage to evolve together, even if it means facing heartache and uncertainty. I ask not that you abandon your expectations, but that you trust me as I forge a new path, one that honors both the past we cherished and the future we might yet share." For a long moment, Thomas said nothing. His eyes, dark and searching, flickered with conflicting emotions: love, regret, and the faintest glimmer of hope. Finally, he exhaled slowly, as if releasing years of pent-up sorrow. "Perhaps," he murmured, "in time I might learn to see you not as the daughter I once knew, but as the woman you are becoming. But understand this: each step you take away from the world we once built carries consequences that neither of us can escape. Evelyn nodded, accepting the gravity of his words. I am aware, she whispered, and I am prepared to face them. For in truth, the only way to be truly free is to embrace every facet of oneself, both the light and the darkness, the passion and the pain. Later that afternoon, as the manor settled into a fragile calm, Evelyn found herself drawn once more to the quiet refuge of the conservatory. There, amidst the soft rustle of leaves and the gentle hum of nature reclaiming its space, she awaited Adrian's return. Their previous encounter had been a crucible of transformation, and now, in the sacred quiet of that hidden garden room, she sought his counsel once more. When Adrian appeared, his eyes still carrying the storm of his own inner conflicts, he said, You have taken a great step today, Evelyn. But remember, the path of transformation is rarely smooth. There will be days when the old chains of duty and expectation pull you back, when the world around you resists your change. In those moments, you must find the strength in yourself to rise again, to remember the beauty of living authentically. Evelyn's response was a soft smile, a mixture of gratitude and determination. I know, she replied. Every day I will have to choose between the safety of conformity and the exhilarating uncertainty of truth. And I choose truth. Under the gentle light of the setting sun, as the cool evening embraced the manor and the world beyond, Evelyn felt the steady beat of her heart, the rhythm of a soul, finally freed from the shackles of expectation. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with the possibility of loss and the spectre of isolation. But it was hers to walk, and in that delicate, trembling moment of self-reclamation, she knew that the true secret seduction was not in deceiving others, but in the honest, unyielding pursuit of one's own soul. Evelyn awoke the next morning beneath a sky tinged with the blush of early spring. The events of the previous day, her emotional confrontation with Thomas, the whispered promises in the conservatory with Adrian, and the murmurs that now floated through the manor's corridors had left her feeling as if she stood on the precipice of an unknown future. In the quiet pre-dawn light, every sound was amplified. The slow ticking of the ancient clock in her chamber, the soft rustle of drapes in the gentle breeze, even the distant coo of a morning dove seemed to underscore the bittersweet truth of change. She dressed slowly, as if each layer of fabric were a symbolic barrier between her past and the self she was beginning to claim. A modest dress in deep navy, trimmed with subtle silver, was chosen not for the approval of others, but for the quiet strength it lent her spirit. Before stepping out, she paused before the mirror. Her reflection, though familiar, now shone with a vulnerability and determination that were unmistakably new. In her eyes was the spark of rebellion against old expectations, a secret seduction of her own soul. Down in the quiet dining hall, the household stirred with hushed conversations. Servants moved like careful ghosts, and even the heavy silence of the walls spoke of secrets too long kept. At the head of the table, Thomas sat with a solemn, distant air. His gaze, heavy with the residue of last night's confrontation, flickered briefly when he saw her enter. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, as if compelled by the delicate gravity of the morning, her mother rose. Her voice, though tempered by years of rigid tradition, was laced with a tentative tenderness. Evelyn, her mother began, tonight's words have set ripples in our world. We are not accustomed to such honesty in our family. Tell us, What is it that you truly seek? Evelyn took a steadying breath before replying. I seek to be seen for who I am, not for the role assigned to me. I seek freedom, the freedom to love, to feel, and to live without fear of judgment. Her words, gentle but unwavering, seemed to hang in the air like an incantation. Thomas lowered his eyes as though the weight of unspoken regrets pressed upon him. But what of our plans? He murmured. What of the life we imagined together? His voice was soft and broken, hinting at dreams that might now be splintering under the force of her truth. In that moment, Evelyn understood that her path would not be paved with easy reconciliations. True transformation, she realized, required sacrifice, the certainty of a shared future, built on the comfort of predictability, was slipping like fine sand through her fingers. And yet, as she met Thomas's sorrowful eyes, a quiet conviction blossomed within her. She would no longer allow her identity to be defined by the ghosts of expectation or by the stale assurances of a life already mapped out. After breakfast, with the manor slowly awakening around her, Evelyn excused herself and made her way to the conservatory. The air was cool and fragrant with the scent of dew-soaked jasmine. Every step seemed to echo her newfound resolve. There, beneath the vast, star-pricked dome of the sky now fading into a soft morning haze, she found Adrian waiting once again. His presence was a familiar balmer, contrast to the suffocating formality of the manor. Good morning, Evelyn, Adrian greeted, his tone low and measured, as if every word were a careful promise. I sensed that the night's revelations had stirred something in you. How do you feel? Evelyn regarded him for a long, searching moment. I feel exposed, yet strangely liberated. Last night, I spoke truths I had long buried. And now I wonder, can I ever truly reconcile the person I was with the person I must become? Adrian stepped closer, his eyes reflecting a shared sorrow and fierce hope. Transformation is never without its cost. We must part with old skins to reveal our true selves. And sometimes the path is lonely, but it is yours to walk. His hand brushed hers, a tender gesture of solidarity. For a moment, the world contracted to the space between them. The quiet murmur of the conservatory, the soft glow of the morning light, the heartbeat of a woman on the brink of rediscovery. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his touch anchor her swirling thoughts. I will walk this path, she whispered, even if it means leaving behind what I once knew. As the day unfolded, Evelyn began to plan her next steps. In quiet solitude, she scribbled notes in a leather-bound journal, thoughts of escape, of journeys to distant lands where she might finally encounter her own truth unfettered by expectation. Yet, even as she dreamed of adventures beyond Belrose Manor, the bonds of duty and the ties of her past clung stubbornly to her heart. Her mother's stern yet pained gaze from the dining hall, Thomas's quiet resignation, and the subtle disapproval of the manor's long-established traditions all reminded her that the cost of transformation was measured not only in tears and whispered secrets, but in the delicate balance between love and loss. That evening, after the manor had sunk into a hushed, reflective quiet, Evelyn found herself alone in her study once more. The candlelight flickered against the dark wood of the desk, illuminating pages filled with hopes and confessions. Outside, the garden lay bathed in the gentle glow of twilight, world that was simultaneously familiar and foreign. In that serene moment, she resolved to continue her journey of self-discovery, regardless of the opposition it might spark. For Evelyn, Every new day was a battle between the allure of the safe and the call of the wild, between the chains of tradition and the wings of freedom. And in that very struggle, she discovered that the true essence of seduction was not in deceiving others, but in daring to reveal the most authentic, unvarnished parts of herself even, when doing so threatened to shatter everything she once held dear. Standing by the window, she whispered a promise to the silent night. I will live as my true self, even if the world around me resists. I will embrace every joy and every heartbreak, for in this honest pursuit, I find the secret seduction of life itself. Evelyn's days in the village began to weave a tapestry of both renewal and reckoning. The gentle hum of daily life in the bustling little community of market, vendors calling out greetings, children darting between sunlit streets, and elders sharing long-forgotten legends on worn park benches gradually infused her with an undeniable sense of possibility. Yet, beneath that vibrant surface, the past remained an ever-present spectre, quietly tugging at the edges of her newfound freedom. One misty morning, while Evelyn strolled along a winding country lane lined with budding wildflowers, she caught sight of a familiar silhouette at a distance. The figure, tall and deliberately reserved, bore the unmistakable carriage of someone from her former world. As she drew nearer, her heart began to thud in a mix of trepidation and anticipation. It was Thomas. His presence here, far from the rigid corridors of Belrose Manor, seemed to defy expectations. For a long, breathless moment, they stood facing each other in the soft light of early day. Thomas's eyes, once filled with the quiet sorrow of a life built on convention, now held a raw mixture of regret and longing. His expression was etched with lines of worry and a silent plea for understanding. Evelyn, he began haltingly, his voice scarcely above a whisper. I never imagined I'd see you here. I thought you'd chosen to hide away. Evelyn's gaze did not waver. I chose to leave because I needed to find myself, she replied, her tone steady but laden with the weight of years. In the manor, I was defined by expectations, by what everyone else wanted me to be. Out here, amidst the honest chaos of life, I am beginning to see what it means to be truly free. Thomas's eyes glistened, and for a moment, the world around them fell silent. The chirr of birds, the rustle of wind in the trees, and even the distant murmur of village life all receded into a tender hush. I miss you, he said, voice raw. Not the idealized version you once embodied, but the real you, the one with hopes, dreams, and imperfections. His words stirred something deep within Evelyn. Memories of quiet conversations in dimly lit drawing rooms at the manor, of her secret meetings with Adrian beneath the ancient oak in the conservatory, and of nights spent wrestling with the fragments of her past all surged forward. She had long known that leaving behind the safety of her old life might mean painful farewells. And now, standing in the soft glow of a new day, Thomas's confession became both an invitation and a reminder of the bonds that still tethered her to a world she was determined to transform. After their brief exchange, Thomas bowed his head. I understand if you wish to move forward without me, but please know, the life we imagined together was never a prison for you. It was a dream we both shared. I hope that, in time, you can forgive me for the part I played in keeping you confined. Evelyn's heart ached at his words, and she reached out, her hand trembling as it brushed his. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, she murmured, but about learning from it so we can move forward without bitterness. There was a long pause as both grappled with the tender vulnerability of the moment. I need to forge a new destiny, a destiny that belongs solely to me. And while our paths may never converge as they once did, I hope you find your own truth along your journey. Thomas nodded, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I will, Evelyn. I will learn to let go if letting you go is what you truly need. With that, he slowly stepped back, leaving her to the quiet murmur of the awakening day. Later that afternoon, as the village sun climbed high into a cerulean sky, Evelyn returned to the modest inn where she had found solace. Over a cup of spiced tea, and in the gentle company of Marianne, the kindly innkeeper who had listened intently to her dreams, Evelyn poured her heart out onto paper. Every line of her journal became a quiet manifesto, a declaration that the secret seduction she had embarked upon was not merely an act of defiance against old expectations, but a sacred journey toward embracing the full spectrum of her identity. That evening, in a secluded nook of the village's ancient library, she encountered Adrian once again. He was engrossed in a faded anthology of poetry, his brow furrowed as if deciphering a secret encoded in the verses. When he looked up and saw Evelyn approaching, his smile was both familiar and bittersweet, silent acknowledgement that their shared journey was far from over. Have you found what you were seeking today? He asked, his voice soft yet laden with promise. Evelyn hesitated, the words catching on the edge of her lips. I have found that my truth is not bound by any one place or person, she replied slowly. It is scattered across the pages of old poems, in the laughter of children, in the gentle kindness of strangers, and yes, even in the sorrow of goodbyes. Adrian reached out, his hand warm against hers. Then let us continue to gather those fragments, piece by piece, until the full picture of who you are emerges, he said quietly. For sometimes, the most potent seduction is the one we enact upon, ourselves seducing our own doubts, our own fears, with the light of our inner truth. In that moment, as the library's ancient oak beams and dust-laden shelves bore silent witness, Evelyn felt an almost tangible shift, a gentle yet unyielding surge of hope. The pain of leaving behind the familiar, of parting with those who had once defined her, was counterbalanced by the radiant possibility of self-reclamation. The path ahead was uncharted and fraught with uncertainties, yet it was hers alone to traverse. As she stepped out of the library into the cool, star-kissed evening, Evelyn allowed herself a single, genuine smile, a smile that whispered of resilience, courage, and the secret seduction of a soul reborn. Evelyn's journey continued to unfold like the pages of an unwritten epic. After leaving the modest inn, she wandered the village's winding lanes until dusk draped the world in soft, fading light. In a small square at the heart of the village, she discovered an old bookstall sheltered under a faded awning. There, among stacks of weathered poetry and forgotten manuscripts, she encountered a man whose presence was as enigmatic as the verses he cherished. Traveling poet and mentor named Edmund. Edmund was a gaunt, silver-haired man whose eyes held the deep wisdom of many lonely years spent searching for truth in both ink and memory. His voice was soft yet carried the weight of a lifetime of experience. Noticing Evelyn's tentative gaze on a collection of poems by a long-departed troubadour, he smiled gently. You have the look of someone who seeks not only to escape, but to understand, he observed, his tone more a statement than a question. Intrigued, Evelyn lingered by the stall, I'm learning that true freedom isn't merely about leaving behind what you know, she confessed, but about embracing what lies within, even the parts that have been hidden or suppressed for so long. Edmund nodded as if in silent accord. The heart, much like a well-worn book, has its margins, filled with secrets and scribbled notes, each a testament to past joys and sorrows. To unlock one's true self, you must read every page, even those that seem too painful to revisit. Over the next few hours, beneath the watchful gaze of a twilight sky, Edmund shared with her stories of his own wanderings, the places he'd been, the voices of the forgotten he'd encountered, and the lessons learned from the subtle art of self-revelation. He spoke of how the gentle seduction of truth could transform even the most hardened heart, and how the pursuit of authenticity was a journey fraught with both peril and wonder. That evening, as Edmund led her to a quiet grove on the outskirts of the village, secret spot where nature's melody blended with the rustle of old pages, Evelyn found herself enveloped in an atmosphere of reflective calm. There, amid the soft chirping of crickets and the gentle sway of ancient trees, she opened a tattered notebook Edmund had lent her. He had inscribed on its first page a single phrase: "Within every heart lies a secret waiting to be revealed." As the night deepened, Evelyn read aloud passages that resonated with her own experiences, verses about love, loss, and the courage to become. With every word, the tangled emotions of her past, her confrontations with Thomas, the lingering sorrow in her mother's eyes, the bittersweet memory of the manor melded with the vibrant possibility of her future. In Edmund's gentle guidance, she found a kindred spirit who reminded her that the journey towards self-acceptance was as much about nurturing one's inner light as it was about confronting the shadows. In the days that followed, Evelyn travelled further with Edmund's advice echoing in her heart. She began to explore not only the scenic beauty of the countryside, but also the rich tapestry of human expression in local gatherings, open-air readings and impromptu recitals by riverbanks. At each encounter, she discovered fragments of herself in the laughter of strangers, the quiet wisdom of elders, and the passionate declarations of young lovers. One crisp morning, as she sat beneath a budding willow by a gentle stream, Evelyn realized that the secret seduction she had begun was not a solitary conquest. It was an invitation for the world to share in her transformation. Each person she met, each story she heard, contributed a new verse to the evolving poem of her life. And while the remnants of her past still whispered in the corridors of her memory, they no longer held her captive. Instead, they became part of the intricate mosaic that defined her. Edmund, now a cherished mentor, left her with a final parting gift before continuing his endless wanderings: a small, leather-bound anthology of poems collected from distant lands. "Let these words be a mirror for your soul," he said with a smile that hinted at both farewell and hope. "May you always find the strength to seduce your own doubts with the brilliance of your truth." Standing at the threshold of this new chapter, where every step was both a departure from the old and an embrace of the uncharted, Evelyn felt a profound sense of liberation. The world, vast and unpredictable, now beckoned her with open arms. And though she knew the path ahead would not be free from heartache or hardship, she welcomed it with the tender determination of one who had finally learned to read the secrets within her own heart. Evelyn's journey now deepened into an exploration of not only the beauty and possibility of the new world outside Belrose Manor, but also the intricate interplay of memory, loss, and self-forgiveness that lay hidden in the recesses of her soul. In the cool, reflective hours before dusk, she wandered alone along a narrow woodland path lined with ancient oaks, whose gnarled branches whispered secrets of time past. The soft patter of rain began to fall, as if the heavens themselves wept with her, each drop a tiny confession of sorrow and hope. As the storm gathered overhead, Evelyn sought refuge in a crumbling stone shelter nestled among the trees, a forgotten relic that had once provided comfort to weary travelers. There, in the intimate embrace of solitude and rain, she opened an old letter she had found tucked away in one of the pages of her grandmother's cherished journal. The faded ink revealed words of tender advice and caution, a reminder that every great journey demands a reckoning with one's past. Her grandmother had written of the importance of embracing both the scars and the triumphs, urging the reader always to seek the truth within, for therein lies the light that will guide you home. Tears mingled with the raindrops as Evelyn read and reread those words. In that fragile moment, the storm outside became a mirror for the tumult within her, chaotic yet necessary force that cleansed and renewed. She recognized that her transformation was not a linear escape from the suffocating expectations of Belrose Manor, but a cyclical process. Sometimes she would be drawn back to the echoes of her former life, and sometimes she would surge forward with the fierce joy of self-discovery. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled her from her reverie. Emerging from the gloom was a young woman, wrapped in a threadbare shawl and carrying a small bundle of books and a leather satchel. Introductions were exchanged in quiet, cautious tones. The newcomer was Isabella, a traveling scholar with eyes alight with curiosity and determination. Isabella explained that she, too, had once been bound by the strictures of a privileged past, and had set out on her own pilgrimage toward authenticity. In her journey across forgotten towns and ancient libraries, she had collected stories of loss and liberation, each one a testament to the hidden strength in vulnerability. Over a shared flask of herbal tea and the soft glow of a flickering lantern, the two kindred spirits spoke at length about the sacrifices required to embrace one's true self. Isabella recounted tales of distant lands, where traditions had crumbled beneath the weight of new ideas, where the old ways gave way to a more fluid, if uncertain, future. Her words resonated deeply with Evelyn, reinforcing that the path toward self-acceptance was not meant to be solitary. As the storm subsided into a gentle drizzle, Evelyn felt the embers of her inner resolve kindle anew. The painful farewells and lingering regrets of her past no longer served as chains but as poignant reminders of the cost of awakening. Every memory, every tear shed in solitude was part of the mosaic that made her who she was becoming. With Isabella's newfound friendship and the quiet reassurance of nature's own transformation, Evelyn resolved that she would continue to forge her destiny with courage, compassion, and the unwavering commitment to her inner truth. That evening, as twilight descended and the first stars shimmered into view, Evelyn sat by a small, weathered desk in the shelter and began to write anew in her journal. Each word was a quiet act of seduction, seducing her own doubts, inviting her fears to be transformed into strength. In that sacred moment of introspection, she pledged to embrace the full spectrum of her life. The beauty, the pain, the joy, and the inevitable loss. For in the delicate balance of all these elements lay the true secret seduction of love, affair with the self that was as enduring as it was transformative. Evelyn's inner journey now demanded a reckoning with the very place that had once defined her, a final, symbolic confrontation with the ghosts of Belrose Manor. The village had given her solace and new friends, but her heart still carried the echoes of those opulent, suffocating corridors. Determined to reclaim every facet of her identity, she resolved to return to the manor, not as the obedient daughter, but as the woman who had learned to seduce her own doubts and forge a life of truth. Under a leaden sky one misty afternoon, Evelyn approached Belrose Manor, its towering facade, draped in ivy and bathed in the soft, mournful light of an overcast day, loomed before her like an ancient sentinel guarding memories both bitter and sweet. Each step on the gravel drive was heavy with anticipation, as if the very earth beneath her feet recognized the weight of her decision. Inside the manor, long dormant corridors stirred with whispers of the past. She moved through halls, where portraits of stern ancestors glowered from their gilded frames. In the echo of her footsteps, she could almost hear the murmur of disapproval, the murmurs of expectations imposed by a lineage that had never known true freedom. Yet now, armed with the wisdom gleaned from her travels and the tender lessons of loss and renewal, Evelyn felt no fear, only a fierce determination to lay her past to rest. In the grand drawing room, a space that had once been the stage for countless social rituals and quiet reprimands, Evelyn paused before the large, ornate mirror. In its reflection, she saw not the timid girl once confined by duty, but a woman transformed. Her eyes shone with quiet defiance. Her posture held the strength of one who had suffered, learned, and risen anew. Slowly, she began to speak aloud, as if addressing every voice that had ever told her who she should be. "I come not to seek forgiveness for a past defined by constraint," she said, her voice resonant and unwavering, "but to celebrate the truth I have discovered in myself. Each tear, each act of rebellion, has led me here to a moment where I can let go of what once chained me and embrace the boundless possibility of who I am meant to be." As if stirred by her words, the very air in the room seemed to shift. The heavy drapes quivered, and the portraits, for a fleeting moment, appeared less like stern judges and more like silent witnesses to her liberation. In that charged silence, Evelyn gently placed her hand upon the cool surface of the mantel, symbolic gesture of bidding farewell to the old life. In her palm lay a small weathered key, one she had found tucked away in a forgotten drawer during her earlier days at the manor. It had always been a secret, a token of an unspoken promise. Now, with trembling resolve, she turned the key in the lock of a small, dust-laden cabinet hidden behind the mantel. Inside, wrapped in faded lace, was a delicate family heirloom, a locket containing a miniature portrait of her grandmother, whose quiet defiance had once inspired her to dream of more. The act was both cathartic and transformative. In unlocking the cabinet, Evelyn symbolically unlocked the parts of herself that had been locked away by tradition and fear. With the locket in hand, she walked to the window that overlooked the vast estate, its grounds now bathed in the soft glow of twilight. She whispered a farewell to the manor, not a bitter goodbye, but a loving acknowledgement of all it had given her and all it had cost her. Outside, the wind carried away the last murmurs of discontent. The manor, with its old-world grandeur, remained as a monument to what once was, but Evelyn had moved beyond its grasp. In that final moment of confrontation, She realized that true seduction, the secret, seduction of life, was not about luring others with false promises, but about seducing oneself to the courage of authenticity. Later that night, back in her modest room at the village inn, Evelyn opened her journal once more. Her pen flowed over the pages, capturing the emotions of the day, the sorrow of parting, the beauty of reclaimed identity, and the promise of a future unbound by the chains of the past. As she wrote, the moonlight danced across the ink, and in each carefully chosen word lay the essence of her transformation, a legacy of resilience, hope, and the unyielding pursuit of truth. Evelyn's journey had brought her to a place of profound self-awareness and liberation. Yet, as she settled into her new life, she felt a lingering desire to reconnect with those from her past, to share her transformation and perhaps inspire change in others. One person in particular occupied her thoughts: Thomas, the childhood friend, whose life had been as constrained by societal expectations as her own. Determined to bridge the chasm that time and circumstance had created, Evelyn penned a letter to Thomas, inviting him to visit her in the village. She chose her words carefully, infusing them with the warmth and authenticity that now defined her. She spoke of her journey, the people she had met, and the truth she had uncovered. She expressed a hope that he too might find the courage to explore beyond the confines of their shared past. Weeks passed before a response arrived. Thomas's letter was brief but heartfelt. He agreed to visit, expressing curiosity and a hint of apprehension. The day of his arrival was marked by a gentle rain, the kind that brings renewal. Evelyn waited at the village inn, her heart a mix of anticipation and nervousness. When Thomas entered, he appeared much the same, yet there was a subtle change, a softness in his demeanor, a questioning in his eyes. They greeted each other with the familiarity of old friends, yet an unspoken acknowledgement of the distance that had grown between them. Over cups of steaming tea, they spoke of their lives since Evelyn's departure. Thomas confessed to feeling trapped, burdened by the weight of expectations and the fear of disappointing those around him. Evelyn listened, her empathy deepened by her own experiences. She shared her journey, not as a prescription but as a testament to the possibilities that lay beyond fear. As the evening progressed, a sense of understanding blossomed between them. Thomas revealed his own dreams, long suppressed, of pursuing art a passion he had abandoned in favor of more respectable pursuits. Evelyn encouraged him, sharing stories of individuals who had embraced their true selves, regardless of societal judgment. Their conversations stretched into the night, a dance of vulnerability and support. By the time they parted, there was a lightness to Thomas's step, a spark in his eyes that had long been dimmed. Evelyn watched him go, hopeful that he would find his own path to freedom. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued to build her life in the village, her heart open to new experiences and connections. She and Isabella deepened their friendship, often collaborating on projects that blended Isabella's scholarly pursuits with Evelyn's newfound passion for storytelling. Together, they organized community gatherings where villagers shared their stories, creating a tapestry of voices that celebrated authenticity and courage. Evelyn's journey had come full circle, from a life of constraint to one of liberation, and now to a role that empowered others to seek their own truths. She had learned that the secret seduction of life lay, not in conforming to expectations, but in embracing the full spectrum of one's identity and inspiring others to do the same. Evelyn's journey had come full circle. From the confines of Belrose Manor to the liberating embrace of the village, she had discovered the profound strength that lies in embracing one's authentic self. Her reconnection with Thomas had not only rekindled an old friendship but also illuminated the transformative power of vulnerability and honesty. In the days that followed, Evelyn and Thomas spent time together, sharing stories and dreams. Thomas, inspired by Evelyn's courage, began to explore his passion for art, sketching the village landscapes and its inhabitants. Evelyn, in turn, found joy in writing, capturing the essence of her experiences and the lessons she had learned. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the village, Evelyn and Thomas sat by the riverbank. The gentle murmur of the water provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation. "Evelyn," Thomas began, his voice tinged with gratitude, "your journey has shown me that it's never too late to seek one's true path. I've spent so long living up to others' expectations that I forgot to consider my own desires." Evelyn smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "It's a realization I came to as well. We often wear masks to fit into roles defined by society. But true fulfillment comes from embracing who we genuinely are." Their conversation meandered through topics of dreams, fears, and the future. They spoke of the importance of self-reflection, of understanding one's values and beliefs, and of the courage required to live authentically. As the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, Evelyn shared a thought that had been forming in her mind. "I've been considering organizing gatherings here in the village," she said. "A space where people can share their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. A place to foster authenticity and support one another in our journeys." Thomas nodded, enthusiasm lighting up his features. "That sounds wonderful. It could be a way to build a community where everyone feels seen and valued." And so, with a shared vision, they began to plan. The village soon became a hub of storytelling evenings, art exhibitions, and discussions. People from all walks of life came together, finding solace and inspiration in each other's experiences. Through these communal gatherings, a beautiful moral emerged. True fulfillment is found not in conforming to external expectations, but in the courageous pursuit of one's authentic self. By embracing our vulnerabilities and sharing our stories, we not only liberate ourselves, but also inspire others to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery. Evelyn's path had taught her that life's secret seduction lies in the dance between self-acceptance and growth. In choosing to live authentically, she had unlocked a wellspring of inner peace and joy, a gift she now shared with all who crossed her path. And so, the village thrived, a testament to the transformative power of authenticity, compassion, and the unwavering courage to be oneself.